Appreciate all of you staying around, and if you would open your Bibles or turn one to Exodus, about the third chapter. We'll be in somewhere in the third and seventh. So, be getting together. As we look at this, I want to continue to encourage you to ask questions. Either send it to me direct or write it on one of the cards and drop it in the collection box back there, or hand it to me, whatever you would like. I really do encourage your questions, even though nobody's asked me any yet. Keep thinking you will. But you haven't, as you want to look and talk about some different things in the Exodus story. As we have gone into this, we talked about the culture that the Hebrews found themselves in Egypt, that Egypt was very much a polytheistic culture, had somewhere, depending on who you talk to, 1,500 to 2,000 different gods, some national, some just regional or local. And the Hebrews were in that culture with their stories passed down in their family about the gods of Abraham for over 400 years. And that their stories, in what we read in our English Bibles as capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, Lord, or in a few cases as all caps God, they were actually using a name of Yahweh, which means the one who exists, or the one who is, or the one who lives. His name has to do with living, being, existing. That was what his name actually is. And I encourage you, as you read through your Old Testament, when you see those words, think Yahweh. It has made a difference to me to realize he really does have a name. And it means something when you read that, don't use the Lord's name in vain. There is an actual name. It's not God or Lord, it's his name. So this week we want to look at some of the signs that was given to Moses to prove his message. Let's talk for a minute about Moses' life. I've got life in 3 acts. Strangely enough, his life divides very well into 3 40-year segments. According to Stephen, when he gives his speech before the Sanhedrin in Acts, Moses was 40 years old when he killed the Egyptian. So, what do you remember? What do we know about Moses' life for the first 40 years of his life?
He was raised as a prince of Egypt, basically.
Raised as a prince of Egypt, son to Pharaoh's daughter. Somebody else?
It was just an Egyptian life.
It was an Egyptian life. He was trained in all the wisdom and knowledge of the Egyptians, which was a leading culture for over 3,000 years. What else? He knew that he was Hebrew. That wasn't a hidden fact, that he was from the lowest caste in their society, and yet he was living in the highest caste of their society. You ever thought about the fact that he was supposed to be dead? He wasn't supposed to live. And here he is in Pharaoh's household. So what happened? Why is he not in Pharaoh's household?
His mother made a plan to escape.
Okay. Why did he need to escape Egypt? he decided to visit his people and saw an Egyptian mistreating one of them, looked around, killed the Egyptian, buried the body. Everything's good, right? The next day, what happens?
Jill Brenner exposed him.
Yeah, that movie was just shown, wasn't it? I have a friend who does not remember ever seeing that movie. And yet, when he saw it as an adult, finally, he went, all my images of Exodus are from that movie, and I don't even remember seeing it. Yeah.
It was the flannel graph.
Yeah, or the flannel graph. He sees a couple of Hebrews fighting, and he tries to break them up, and they say, well, you're going to kill us too. Pharaoh finds out about the murder is not hidden, the killing of the Egyptian, and so he flees. Where does he go? Midian, outside of Egypt's control. Okay, so that second 40-year span of life, what happens when he gets to Midian? I keep wanting to say Midian. Midian, and what goes on there? He becomes a shepherd. Finds a wife. When he first gets there, he sees some women, apparently young women, draw water for their sheep. And then some other shepherds come in and they drive the women away, even though they drew the water. And he defends them, chases off those shepherds, and the daughters. So when he gets home, Jethro, a priest of Midian, says, why are you home so early? This apparently was a daily occurrence, that they were the last to get their water for their sheep. And they said, well, this Egyptian rescued us and even drew water to. And he went, and where is he? Well, we left him there at the well. Well, go get him. If he's done this kindness and he marries into the family, has 2 sons. We only learned about one of them here at this point, but he has 2 sons. What is the life of a shepherd like back then? Any ideas? Quiet. Most of the time. Routine.
Just as, when you think about Abraham's promise that you're going to be a great nation, and God's preparation for that nation, Abraham doesn't know how to lead millions of people. He doesn't know how to build a nation. He's a shepherd. He's like this group here in Midian. So God sends the people there and plucks Moses out to learn everything about growing up in government, growing up with the military, growing up with building projects, growing up with budgets. But he doesn't just stop there. He then sends him to go grow up and be a shepherd. Go back to your roots. So there's a really interesting, to me it's a really amazing thing that God says, not only do I need the leader of my people to know what it's going to be like to build a nation, I'm going to need him to know what it's like to be a shepherd. And so Moses gets he gets the Abraham experience and he gets the Egypt experience.
Okay, so he gets both those experiences. But a shepherd is a very lonely life. I mean, for the most part. I mean, you're basically spending all day out in the countryside over a bunch of sheep that can't protect themselves, that they're just not smart animals. And you're protecting them from predators, and wild things that would get after him. One of his tools is a staff. I don't know if it was something like this is one of mine that's 5 or 6 feet long. It's hardwood. It's solid. I mean, if you're out hiking, these are very handy. If you're out camping, these come in very handy. I don't know how many of you do that or have done that, but it becomes a very handy tool, very adaptable, from driving off predators to killing things to using it to cook your meals with. Hang that over a fire. It's a lot better than trying to hold the pot by your hand over a fire. They're really, really handy. I don't know if he went back every time at night, back to the main camp, or if he would stay out for days at a time. Sometimes you do.
With any kind of livestock, you gotta keep moving because they're eating the grass and they finish that and you gotta move on.
Mm-hmm.
It's nomadic
So you're herding them, leading them from one place to another. And even more so than what we see in our country, their wilderness is very dry. Like, I think the closest thing I would come to it is Arizona, New Mexico kind of thing. It rains occasionally. And if you've ever seen pictures from over there, most of the grass that they find, they're moving all the time because it's just a little clump underneath the shade of a rock somewhere. So they're constantly moving from one place to another. And we said boring most of the time. I think occasionally you're going to have a predator come after them of some kind. Yeah.
It's also a profession that's disrespected by the Egyptians.
Mm-hmm.
When Joseph's brothers were coming to town, he said, don't tell our shepherds because the Egyptians don't like shepherds.
Yeah. So he's gone from the height of the Egyptian culture to something that's absolutely detested by the Egyptian culture. And he's a shepherd. And apparently getting pretty comfortable with it because he did it for 40 years. Right? And then what happened?
God called him to do something else.
Yeah. So he's out shepherding, and it says he is in the western side of Midian, and something attracts his attention. A burning bush that's not consumed by the fire. I'll open, what?
It spoke, the bush spoke.
The bush spoke. Yeah, we're going to get there in a second. I'll give you an opening. Do you think he saw the fire first? What did he see first? Smoke? Well, that's unusual, isn't it? Is that somebody else's camp? You get close and so, oh, there's a bush on fire. Okay, that's a little unusual. Maybe there was a lightning strike, maybe, who knows what. But there's something on fire. But it's not consumed.
So did it produce smoke?
I don't know.
It doesn't say so.
Doesn't say smoke. Have you seen a fire out in the wilderness without smoke?
I don't think they have lightning. I don't think they still have lightning in that part of the world.
Oh, well, we know they are later. Fire that's hot enough does not produce smoke. Why would a bush that is burning but not being consumed be of interest to somebody that's spending time out in the wilderness?
Well, assuming he's seen things on fire before in his life, I would liken it to Oklahoma's wildfire that consumes a cedar. I mean, rapidly, that fire destroys it. It's like it explodes. I don't know what kind of bush it was, but if it's on fire, typically if you had seen that before, you would see it go out quickly because it would just consume it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to be
going to draw, I mean, normally a fire starts, it grows, and as it consumes the fuel, it dies back down. This is not dying down. Endless energy. Do you know what they had to do? If you're out camping, what do you have to do to keep your campfire going, to cook your food over a campfire? You are always looking for dead wood. So if you see some wood that burns and burns and burns, it's like, I don't know what that is, but I want some of it for my camp. That means I don't have to go out and get wood all the time. So he gets closer, and the bush speaks to him. Who's in the bush? God.
Did Moses know God at that point? Because he's been living the life of an Egyptian. I'm guessing Jethro was not a Hebrew priest.
He wasn't a Hebrew priest, but the indication is that he was a priest of Yahweh, because they called this place the Holy Mountain, the mountain of Elohim, as it gets written in Hebrew. I'm assuming they spoke something other than Hebrew. I don't know what the Midianites spoke.
Well, his mother continued to teach him when he was very young, even in Pharaoh's house, so you'd have to assume that he had some teachings.
So he knew the stories, probably, knew of the stories, but did he, we don't know. I mean, it doesn't actually say whether he knew Yahweh or not, or he knew of Yahweh. I want to also challenge you on where this was. This is actually pulled off of a modern map that, Israel is here. This is Jordan. Egypt is here. This is what we call the Sinai Peninsula. Here's the Gulf of Suez, the Gulf of Aqaba. I don't know about you, but I grew up being taught that Mount Sinai, we don't know exactly where it is, but it was somewhere down here. And so they crossed over. But Midian is actually to the east over here of the Gulf of Aqaba. And what I read and got to noticing, got to doing some research on, was that Moses said he took the sheep, first of chapter 3, that he was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And this area was now and always was under the control of Egypt. So if he fled from Pharaoh and left the country, he had to have fled all the way over here. And if he was on the west side of that, there's a possible that the actual Mount Horeb is over here, even though we still call this Sinai. In fact, what they theorize, this is a different map, is that when they leave the Exodus, they leave from the land of Goshen up here in the Delta area and actually cross somewhere, depending on which one you look at. This Gulf of Aqaba is the crossing of the Red Sea, because that is outside of Egypt's control. I don't know. We still don't know, and there's not any, they were nomadic people. There's not a lot of archaeological evidence. So he's at the burning bush. The bush speaks. Says, I'm God. I'm going to tell you my name, which we talked about last week. If you had a chance to read this, he tells Moses, here's what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to pull the people out of Egypt. And he says, and this will be a sign for you, a sign for Moses. What's the first sign for Moses that is mentioned? This is a trick question. I'll tell you that right now. Look in verse 12, chapter 3, verse 12. What's the sign for Moses?
Worshiping God on the mountain.
You're going to bring those people here to this mountain, wherever that mountain is. This is the sign for you. This is going to work. You're going to do this. That doesn't happen for another 15 or 16 chapters. He goes through all the plagues, all the traveling, crosses the Red Sea before the sign that God gave Moses actually happens.
Seems a little backwards to me.
Doesn't it?
I'm gonna need my sign up front. Instead of after I do the thing.
Yeah. So how does Moses respond to, okay, you want me to lead 2 million people, give or take, out of the control of the most powerful nation I know of, I've heard of. You want me to go tell them that you've talked to me.
He immediately starts it with what if, some hyperbole.
Yeah, first part of it is, okay, when I go tell them that you've talked to me, what is your name? Because we don't know it. I know your descriptions, God Most High, God Almighty, El Shaddai, the God who sees, the God who heals. But what's your name? God tells him his name. And he says, they won't believe me. So what does Yahweh say to him then? He goes, what's that in your hand? It's my walking staff. Used it for years, probably maybe even decades. What do? He goes, throw it down. Snake! You know? Have you seen some of the videos of the guys that walk up and clip this behind somebody on a golf course? Oh, I find it hilarious. You know? It's a snake. We don't tend to like snakes.
The only good one is a dead one.
There you go. I thought about tossing this, but decided against that part of it. So he tells him, I thought maybe some of you would take this too literally and do exactly like Moses did. He ran. He fled. Okay? It may have been. I mean, he's been in the wilderness 40 years. Okay? He's come across snakes, and he knows what a poisonous snake is. And he just threw down a piece of stick that's 5 or 6 feet long, and it became a snake. So I'm thinking it's a 5 or 6 foot long snake, which is a big one. And his weapon to defend himself just became what could attack him. So Yahweh tells him to do what? To do what? To grab it and grab it firmly by the tail, right? If any of you have, I don't know if you've actually handled snakes or if you've seen it done, what happens when you grab a snake by the tail? It comes right back at you. I mean, if a snake is trying to run off, you grab it by the tail quickly, and then you quickly let go because it turns around and comes right back after you. Moses is a wilderness person. He knows what's going to happen. And so what he would normally, if you're going to normally do it, you're just going to grab it and let go real quick. And he is told to grab it and hold firmly. And it becomes a staff again. We're going to come back to this story. And one of the reasons we're going to come back to this story at some point is because that word from the Hebrew that is translated firmly is translated in other places as harden. So I'll let you think about that for a while. So it becomes this staff again. And Moses says, okay, I'm good to go then. Right? No. No. And then it says, and Yahweh says. So apparently, whenever, it's a Hebrew expression, I've learned, that when two people are in a conversation, and then you read that phrase, and Yahweh says again, that there's been some other conversation going on there that's not recorded. I don't know what it is, but Moses doesn't seem to be convinced by his trusted staff becoming a snake and then coming back as a staff again. Now, I know you know the story, and he was raised for 40 years in Pharaoh's household. Has he seen this before? I don't know if he has or not. Maybe. I don't know. He's seen stuff. He's getting ready to see it again. Yeah. But at this point in the story, I don't know if he's seen that done before or not. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that chunk of wood actually became a live animal or not? Pardon? Okay, later on, yeah, when he does it in front of Pharaoh. So let me ask you this question. When he does it in front of Pharaoh, and then the sorcerers and wise men of Egypt do the same thing, did theirs actually become a snake, or was it like a David Copperfield illusion and they just made it look that way? Yeah, I pose that question because I grew up always thinking that Moses, that Yahweh really did it for Moses, and that the magicians and wise men of Egypt were just really good, what we call illusionists. I enjoy some hand magic and doing things, and when I was in my 20s, we were involved in doing children's Bible hour, and we started doing illusions to illustrate points. We did magic tricks, but when a friend of mine took a bottle of a glass of water and turned it into wine, and we heard the kids telling their parents, hey, Stormy turned water to wine just like Jesus. We went, we got to call this a different thing. It's not magic, it's an illusion. It looks like that, but that's not really what it is. That's what David Copperfield and Penn and Teller do, and they pointed out, Penn and Teller used to do a show where they would reveal how things happened that made, you think what you saw is real, but they show you it's really not. But was this magic? Was this illusion, or was this magic? Were these false gods powerful or not? I'm kind of leaning towards they are. Satan has real power. And there's another miracle that happens in front of Pharaoh when God's snake eats the others. Have you ever seen a video of a snake eating anything? It's not fast. It's a time-consuming process. And you can tell a lot of times how much they've eaten by how big the snake's body is. If this snake ate multiple other snakes, did Aaron have to carry a log out? He carried his staff out. I'm thinking it had to have eaten those other snakes, but not gotten any bigger. And maybe. I don't know. I don't know how long this took. We're not told about the time sequence. But it took a while, in all probability. So, if we go with the theory that Moses was not convinced with the staff becoming a snake, what happens then at the burning bush? Put his hand inside his coat. Now take it out. Do you think I'm going to have a white glove on? He brought it out, and it was completely covered in a white skin disease. Now, that's his own hand. You can't run from your own hand, but I'm sure he is what just happened. Now put it back. Now bring it out, and it's restored like it was, just normal. What just happened? And then Yahweh says, if that's not enough, take a pitcher of water and pour it on the ground, and it will become blood on the ground. Not in the pitcher, on the ground. Can you tell the difference between Kool-Aid and blood? So can Moses. So can Pharaoh. So can the elders. So how does Moses respond once he has these three signs? Okay, I'm in. No. Huh? Yeah. I don't want to do this.
Yes, it's attended Toastmasters.
Pardon? He said he has not attended Toastmasters yet. I am not eloquent. I don't talk good. In this case of I'm not eloquent, before or since you have talked to me. Yeah. Even though in the New Testament, Moses is described in Hebrews as somebody mighty in being raised in Egypt, that he was mighty in word and deed. But he says here, after 40 years in the wilderness, I'm not that guy.
One of Moses' big mistakes is thinking that this is the moment that God's calling him. When the moment God calls him is at least as early as being put in the river. God's whole life plan for Moses is his calling. I think that's one of those things that we think, oh, God's got stuff for me to do that, well, guess what? He's been preparing you your whole life to do these things. And we kind of think that everything just happens in the moment. Moses is looking at this moment as if this is some change of plan. No, this has always been the plan.
Yeah. This has always been there. He didn't see it. He didn't know it. He couldn't see this as preparation. He thought this was the end game. But it wasn't. It was just preparation for what he needed to do. But God's response to you don't talk well is, I made your mouth. I control this. I will put my words in your mouth. And that's when he comes back with, just send somebody else. And Yahweh's anger is kindled against Moses. And he says, your older brother Aaron, he's a good speaker. I will let him be your mouthpiece. How did that work out for Moses? You know, Beth? You had something before that I asked that question, so put that question on hold.
I kind of look at it, I don't know, I see this as God being, yes, angry, but also tender with him, because it says that Aaron is already on his way, and God knows that. He's already coming. He knows what Moses' response is going to be. And so I've always kind of liked that, because a lot of us don't know what we have within us yet, and need a little bit more prompting. So this has always been one of those things where at first I would read going, oh man, Moses, just take the, but then when I read that he's already on his way, God knows that, that made me see it in a much more tender way.
Okay.
And the reflection of Moses' writing this, that he was reflecting that God had already prepared Aaron to come.
Mhm.
So,
I don't know if it was to be the mouthpiece, but
Right.
that goes into that whole
That's
question
the
Daryl
word.
was asking last week in Ephesians first. How much of this is preordained and how much is free will? But that's not one of the rabbit trails I want to go down this morning.
At least the support.
Yes. Yeah, Debbie?
I think it sort of reflects a little bit on maybe Moses's ego, because he has been raised an Egyptian, he's done all this stuff, and it would be real easy for him to, sort of pump himself up and, oh, hey, I can do this, I'm gonna be a big star now, I'm gonna bring all these people on. But he puts himself down, and his, even if he can speak well, he's he's trying to be modest. I don't think it's false modesty, I think he really is trying to be modest in front of God. That God has overwhelmed him or impressed him so much that he is like, who am I that can do this? I think
Yeah.
he's just, and God likes people that are,
Humble.
yeah, humble, exactly.
Yeah. So apparently at one point, and when he was about 40 years old, Moses thought he could do this and failed. Have you ever had a spectacular failure in your life that you start and it just flops? And somebody says, I want you to do that again. And you go, no. It was miserable. I don't want to do that ever again. And after 40 years, I think he's pretty comfortable being a shepherd. I'm not sure that he became such a great spokesman and tradesman like in the Ten Commandments movie. I don't know if that happened or not, but I know he's a shepherd, and he's comfortable doing that. Renee?
What he had done before 40 years prior was reliant upon himself. And here he is objecting to God because he recognizes that self is not adequate. His inadequacy, his insecurity in his words, in his believability, in his ability to get a whole nation following him. He's thinking, I'm incapable. Now he realizes I'm incapable. I'm not adequate. And God says, I'm the I am.
Mm-hmm.
And, how many times in life when we're younger, we have all the answers because we haven't met the questions yet. And then later in life, we finally have back-to-back questions. And I see that transformation in Moses and the relatability of, there's no way I can carry out this mission. I've tried it before.
Yeah, I've tried it before, and I have less resources than I had before. What makes you think you need to send somebody else? That's
That's where Paul says, it's in my weakness
mm-hmm.
I'm made strong in Christ.
Right. Yeah, it's in the weakness, and so there is that, and and my point being, how did having Aaron be his spokesman work out for him? You think about how often Aaron does things that you wonder, I mean, from making the golden calf to actually opposing Moses. So anyway, there is all of that going on, and so when he does go back, and when he and Aaron call together all the elders, how does that work out? They believe. He does the signs, and they believe. So, good times are coming, right? We'll pick up there next week, and hopefully get into actually showing up before Pharaoh. And let me leave you with this question to look at in chapters 4 through 7. What does God tell Moses he's going to do, and what does Moses actually ask from Pharaoh? See you next week.